Hello, the game is Temtem. In this video, I will be discussing all of the beginner details. I will try to cover everything you might need to know to get started playing. Any tips and tricks I think are helpful and that won't spoil any storylines. So this should be a nice long video, so sit back, relax. Links will be in the description to different segments in case you just wanted to skip to a certain bit of information, so look at the description for that. Let's start with what kind of game is Temtem? What are we looking at here? So in the beginning, Temtem was crowdfunded. It raised a pretty good amount of money. I think a lot of people were interested in this type of game. The design was going to be a Pokemon-esque type creature capture collection game. So basically, it's very similar to Pokemon, a little bit different art style, some small minor differences. But that's the essence of the game. But what does that mean? I didn't really play Pokemon that much. There's a lot of you out there who probably haven't. So what does a Pokemon type game mean? Well, basically it's a turn-based battle system to where you can have one or two creatures that you have collected and trained up and leveled up, and then you can battle them against another tamer who can call in his creatures, and you can pull Temtem out, which are the creatures. They're called Temtems. You can pull them out and put them in depending on what their strengths and weaknesses are, and then it's turn-based, similar to like Dragon Warrior or Final Fantasy type battle system, where you select fight, which ability you want to use. Do you want to run away? Do you want to use a potion? So that's what drew me to it. Is I love a good turn-based game, and to have a turn-based MMO is what really attracted me to this game, because there's not a lot of good turn-based games out there, and I can't think of any turn-based MMOs off the top of my head. I was attracted to Temtem as well because I do like the collection system. So I do like a game where I can farm for items or rare versions of items, where I can spend my time and my effort to increase my team or my ability, so that to have the ability to go out and collect hundreds of different creatures and go out and find rare ones, and then to go battle them and train them up so they increase in experience and you can increase their stats. I love all that stuff. So the turn-based system, the collection system, that's what really attracted me to this. The anime, I'm not big on that kind of stuff. The style, I'm not too big on that, although I have to say I love the art style of this game. It's very simplistic, so it's going to be able to run very smoothly on a lot of systems without having to have a super high-end rig. And it also looks good. The animations are well done. I find that as I play the game more, I enjoy the art style more in the art direction, and I love how different areas change looks and appearance and sounds. So I really enjoy the art style, even though that's not what brought me to the game. Where to buy the game? I believe the only two places that are legit to buy the game from is Steam and Humble Bundle. I believe it is $35 US to purchase a copy. This is early access. I do not know if the price will go up. Personally, I feel like they would be foolish if they did not increase the price with the full release to $50 or $60. They do intend on releasing this on other platforms such as the Switch. I'd imagine they're going to try for Xbox and PlayStation 4. It seems to be extremely controller friendly. Actually, I for the first time hooked up my PlayStation 4 controller to my PC just for this game, because it's actually a lot faster and more efficient to use a controller and a lot more comfortable, which was very surprising to me. And if you need to know how to do a PS4 controller to your Windows computer, check my video history. I got a little quick tutorial on how to do that in there. I believe the developers said that they do want this game to be cross-platform, so meaning PC players can play with Switch players. I do not know if they'll be able to accomplish that. I think that really depends on like licensing agreements and stuff like that. What I do hope, if that's not possible, that they at least allow our characters to transfer between. So for example, I don't have to buy a copy for my PC and then buy a copy for my console and then have two different separate accounts and have to play, you know what I mean? Like if I want to play on my console, I got to play my maybe not leveled up character, you know, and you have to go through everything again. Diablo 3 was like that, and that's one thing I really disliked about Diablo 3 was having to buy multiple copies and have different accounts. You couldn't have the same account on different medias or platforms, and that led me to having to pick and choose. Like, do I want to play on PC or do I want to play on PlayStation? And I just really didn't like that. So I hope that this game goes the route of, at very minimum, if you can't play with other platforms, and it's not cross-platform playable, I hope at least the accounts are cross-platform. And before you buy or consider buying, you should be very aware that this is a early access, not finished game. Currently, there's about 80. It took me about 80 hours to get through the storyline. I wasn't rushing it. I wasn't going super slow. I was just kind of just going at my own pace. And, you know, if I got to an area that had some rare Temtem, I would sit there and farm a few of them and then move on. I think it's worth buying, though. 80 hours worth of gameplay content for $35 is a pretty good deal. The game is not it's not buggy at all, actually. I'm very pleased with how they released it. The release was a little buggy for the first 3 or so days because so many people were trying to play it. But the devs were extremely communicative and got that resolved quickly. I was really impressed with that. Yeah, I don't really have too much of a problem in the game. It runs like a well-made game, but it is still early access. And once you're done with the storyline, there's not a lot of endgame in place. You know, the endgame basically consists of farming for ultra rare Lumas, which are, I guess, Pokemon's version of that was a shiny. It's basically just a little bit better starting stats, and it has different colors, and it's like shiny and different colors. So people use those as like you know, just ways of flexing, I guess. You know, it's just cool to have one. They're worth a lot of money to trade, so you can farm for them, which really is just extremely boring and just running. You go into a battle, doesn't have a Luma, you run away. You go into a battle, doesn't have a Luma, you run away. So you know, that can get very boring. My calculations put it at, I mean, it's a 1 in 6,000 chance to get a Luma. So my calculations put that at about 24 to 48 hours of non-stop encountering battles and running away in the area that you want to get the Luma at. That's 24 hours played. So you literally, it's going to take you, probably a normal person, it's probably going to take a week to 2 weeks of farming, like after work, coming home and sitting there playing for 4 hours a day. A week to 2 weeks of farming before you're going to catch a Luma that you want. I'm not trying to make that sound bad. Some people like doing that. There's also trading in the end game, so there's a pretty strong market right now for trading, which involves Lumas, breeding, selling 50 starter value Temtem that you capture pretty frequently, so people can breed. So trading, if you like economies and trading, you might like this game a lot. I don't know what systems are going to implement to help that. Currently, you can trade with somebody in-game any place you're at. You don't have to stand next to them. You just send them a trade request, and then a trade window pops up, and you can exchange whatever goods you want to sell or buy. So the trading window is pretty nice. I like that you don't have to be near each other. I don't know if they're going to put like an auction house or a marketplace, or they're just going to, everybody just has to do it offline. But in the official Discord is a good area for trading online. There's some online sites that are popping up. Be careful with some of those. Some of those seem very sketchy to me. But most of it's done like either, I think most of it's done in the Discord, to be honest with you. There's also breeding, which is extremely complex, and some people seem to really enjoy it. So you're basically, what you're trying to do is breed Temtem together to get a perfect starting value stats. So all the stats being a perfect 50, and then you can breed in what they call egg moves. So you can transfer moves from non-related or from other Temtem into the Temtem that you're trying to build with perfect stats. So you can transfer those moves, so they'll start out with those moves from the point of them hatching from the egg, which is why they're called egg moves. And then you can also get Lumas when you're breeding, so that's potential. And if you breed Lumas with Lumas, then you have a higher chance of breeding a Luma, which is another, that's like super, super high-end stuff. Like, I imagine like the ultra end game is going to be breeding Lumas. Perfect Lumas will be the ultra, with egg moves and the traits you want will be the ultimate end game, I think. So I did a how to make money guide covering like the 3 basic general ways of making money, which basically that's the current end game. So if you want to check out my history, I just go into my video, into my channel, and look for that how to make money guide. It's a pretty good video. It gives you a broad understanding of each aspect and what goes on in it. And then there's the Freetem part of the end game, which basically that means you get into battles, you got to fight the creatures down to low health and debuff them, and then you throw Temcards, which is the equivalent of like Pokeballs. You throw your capturing item, and then you try to capture them. You can either, if they have good stats, like the starting values, I call them SVs, they're random, they're completely random. So each stat is a random numbered between 1 and 50. So there's 7 stats, and each one's completely random. All of them could be 50s. All of them could be 1s. It's completely random what you get, but most likely you're gonna get a lot of in-betweens, and you might every once in a while, I think it's like 15% of the time, you're gonna get a SV with a perfect 50 stat. You want to keep that, store that in your, I forget what's called, Temtem bank, and that can be sold to a player for maybe double or triple the value of releasing it. It all depends on what kind of Temtem it was and how rare it was, and what the stat was determines the value of that. Or you could keep it and use it for breeding yourself, because that's, I won't get into a breeding guide, but you need those 50 stats to be able to breed those perfect 50 SVs into the Temtem that you're creating, because the goal for breeding would be to create all 7 stats having the max starting value of 50. And you can only really do that if you get lucky by catching one, which is going to be extremely rare, or you can kind of force it using the in-game money to buy items to force the transfer of those stats together and breed perfect Temtem, which kind of goes back into breeding, and then people sell those. But to get back on topic, so you capture the Temtem, you either keep it if it has a good stat, or you release it. Releasing it is called Freetem, because there's a Freetem vendor in the game who, their purpose is they want all the Temtem to be free. They don't like people who capture and enslave Temtem. So even though you're capturing them, they'll give you a reward for freeing Temtem. So basically every Temtem you free has a value. The value is determined on the type of Temtem it is and the level it is. So that's one way of making money, is basically you just running around an area and capturing them and then freeing them. But what's nice about that is because you're actively making money. Like, you can make anywhere from 5,000 in-game money to 15,000 in-game money. It really depends on how quick you are and how your team is set up. Is it set up properly for the area? And I have quite a few guides I've done on this, so please look into the how to make 10K per hour using this team type videos that I have in my channel, if you want to see how that's done and what's involved in it. But that's basically an endgame, and I like doing that because A, you're collecting materials for breeding. At the same time, you're slow farming Luma, so you're not running away from the battle. The battles take extra time, so you're not optimized for farming Luma, but you're encountering constantly, right? So every encounter is a chance to to find a Luma that you can catch. So you're slow farming Luma, you're gradually getting in-game money by releasing the ones you don't need. You're building up your 50 SV ones that you can either use for sell or breeding. So I kind of like that. It's like the base grind. And then everything else kind of builds off that. The trading builds off of that. The breeding builds off of that. So I think it's well put together. But that's currently all they have in the end game. So once you're done with the story, you're either grinding, breeding, trading, or doing a combination of all of them until there's more to do in the game. You can fight, but it's like more like a duel. There's no tournament system in place. There are some players who are doing like their own tournaments, which was very fun. Actually, somebody held one on Super Bowl Sunday, and I was watching that more than I was watching a game. It was so entertaining having somebody go through a tournament, and the end player got a Luma, So it was nice. I can see a lot of potential in this game. I can see them setting up tournaments. I can see them maybe setting up a spectator so people can watch the tournaments, and maybe even have the tournaments recorded, right? Because the way the game system's set up, it's just Temtems and moves. So they could actually have those recorded and stored for like a week, where players can go in and see who fought which tournaments and who won, and kind of analyze the battle and the choices that they made and stuff like that. I remember Magic the Gathering had that. I had a lot of fun playing that card game, which is the same thing. It's like a turn-based game that the cards have moves, but when you went, you paid for tickets, and then those tickets were like entry fees into the tournament. And then in the tournament, if you won, you got rewards that were worth more than the entry fee. And it was a lot of fun. It was a great way to make in-game money. It was a great way to make cards. But what was nice about it is you could go back and watch those tournaments. Anybody could watch them. They were public. So you could look at the best players and see what they were using and how they utilized their cards and what their strategies were, and you could learn from them. And a lot of, if you were a popular player, that was pretty famous and people knew you were a good player, they would watch your tournaments because you were playing them. So I'm kind of rambling on about that, but I just foresee so many possibilities with this game. It really depends on what the developer's able to pull off, and I'm pretty excited for it, because what they were able to pull off for the amount of money that they made, just what they have currently, just the base of the game, looks really good to me, and it has a lot of potential. And I think they sold about 1 million copies, so they got 35 million minus whatever costs are. They might have $10 million to spend on further development. If they made what they made with $500,000 and now they got $10 million, I see potential for this game. I see a lot of potential for this game. So that's, if I sound like I'm excited, that's why. I see a lot of potential for Endgame here, if they do it right. I see PvP potential, but they also need to have PvE potential, because the current endgame of just grinding isn't going to sustain people. They have to work more on co-op and give us reasons to group together, not just with friends, but with strangers is an important part of it. Like, co-opting maybe like a little quest run or dungeon run where at the end we're rewarded for our time would be nice. Or, I can suggest all kinds of ideas, but they really need to work on both the battle system, players battling each other, and something for cooperative, non-competitive play, right? So you got to have cooperative play, and you have to have competitive play to make the game fun and have longevity. So sorry about that. I could go on for hours and days about game design and theory. But speaking of the developers, I'm very pleased with their interaction. I'm very pleased with their reactions to what has happened since they released. I can't remember a developer, since I started in the late 90s playing online games, that has been so interactive with the community and not insultive and fast to react. I mean, the servers were having a hard time the first day. They were doing adjustments every 15-20 minutes to try to get them up and running better. And while they're doing it, the representative that they have on point in the Discord is, hey, we're going to restart. We're trying a new config. He's just keeping us updated every 15 minutes, every 20 minutes, just letting us know what's going on, what they're doing, what they're trying, what worked, what failed, just being open and honest communication. That was delightful. I was very impressed with that, and within 3 days, it had everything up and running, no lag, no disconnects, no problems. There was a few bugs in the game. They fixed them. They heard the feedback. They fixed them. They're very reactive to the feedback on fixing bugs. There were some exploits in the game. I'm pretty into the community, and by the time I found out about the exploits, the devs had already found out about the exploits. Within 24 hours, they had those exploits locked down, and I was actually concerned because they locked down the exploits, but the people who utilized them weren't punished, and I was like, that's not good. Like, when a company does not ban the people who were exploiting, then they get to exploit and keep their rewards. So, I mean, my mindset is, well, next exploit comes around, I'm just going to abuse it, because they don't ban people that abuse it. So, like, just an average person might think that, and then that kind of compounds on the people who would utilize exploit. Nope, they were just gathering data and scrubbing it and making sure they were banning the correct people, because they did a ban wave and knocked a lot of those people offline. And you can see it because you can inspect people. So, you know, if I look at somebody and they have a Temtem they're not supposed to have, or there's something fishy about their profile, people were seeing that a lot. And then they did the ban wave, and I haven't seen anybody like that since. So, I don't like the fact that there were available exploits in the game. I feel like it's up to the developers to keep a clean house so the pests don't get in, right? Like, it's hard to blame an insect or a rodent for invading your house and eating the crumbs you left on the floor because you didn't have time or you weren't professional enough to sweep up your floor. And that's kind of a weird way of saying it, but it's hard to blame the exploiters for exploiting something that the developers should have made sure was a closed hole, make sure it was secure. So that's their job as a game developer, right? But I really do like how they responded to it. I like that they banned the players. They were very forceful about it. They were, you know, a lot of people didn't like that. I liked that they were like, I don't even want to hear your petitions. You exploited. We made sure that you exploited. It wasn't like an automated system just banning people falsely. We're not taking petitions to reopen your account. Don't exploit. I love that hard stance like that. And some people don't. I personally do. So I was happy with that. I'm happy with the content that they made and put forth. It just feeds into the, I'm not trying to hype the game, but it feeds into my personal hype. Like, when I see a developer acting like that, they act like how I would act. They act like how a gamer would act. You know, they act like somebody who has experience, not just some business guy making decisions and making bad decisions. So I have a positive outlook on the developers at this point, and we'll see. Hopefully that isn't ruined later on. You know, last few years have been very crushing for us gamers. The developers just seem to be, I don't know what. They drank crazy Kool-Aid or something last few years, because they're all going off the rails. And I hope we see a shift in that in the gaming industry. But I don't want to get into philosophy and all that stuff. So let's move on to the next topic. All right, the next topic is best online resources. So what websites are there out there to help you figure out all the stuff in this game? The official wiki is probably one of the better ones. It's a good resource, but it is limited. But I would definitely have that bookmarked. I just found this site, mapgenie.io. has a online interactive map, which is probably a nice map that shows you all the shops, where all the Temtems are, and it's interactive, so you can scroll it around, zoom it in and out, filter what you want. So I do like that, and it has all the areas labeled, which is a big problem, because currently in the game they don't have, on the in-game map, they have nothing labeled. So when it tells you to go to, like, let me give you an example here. Let me look at the map. The Solar River. Where's the Solar River? I don't know. What's that? There's no label. So what I like about this website is that there are labels as well. One of the better resources out there is temtemstrat.com. They have, ranking charts. Actually, let me switch it over to English. One of the things I hate about this site, it always reverts back to French. They have an English option, but it doesn't, like, store in your cookies. I'm signed up, I'm logged in. For whatever reason, it doesn't go, oh, this is an English user, let's keep him as English every time he comes in. So every time you come to their site, you gotta flop it back from French to English, which is annoying. So this site is one of the better strategic sites. So it has strategic rankings, it has a nice interactive map that shows you where the Temtems are, what the rates of spawning is. They have a list of all the Temtems, list of all the moves, list of all the Temtem traits. You can sort Temtems by what TVs they give you, and I'll get into that in the stats later. You can sort by how much Pansun, which is the in-game money, how much they give you when you release them. They got tools like a types chart tool, a SV calculator for breeding. They have a lot of information in this site. It's one of them. I frequent this site probably more than any other site. And then what else do we have? Temtactics.gg is a good site. They have a lot of good information there. I would definitely bookmark that one. And then I think that's about it for websites. There might be a few other ones, but I find with those have everything I need. The only other thing I would say is the Discord is extremely helpful. Go in there, get into Temtem chat and talk to people, ask for help. You have a spoiler chat in there. If you're into PvP and you want to discuss, battling and what tactics and the current meta that is developing, there's a competitive channel. There's trade channels in there to trade. So the official Discord is definitely, I would consider that a must for the game as far as information. And then the other thing you want to, if you get into breeding, who were these guys that made this? Bread method found by Tasty and Bordenar, designed by, and I don't know what their logo is, but these guys put together a nice breeding kind of map that shows you overview of what the costs are, how you breed them together to get the combined perfect Temtem that you want at the end, what materials to buy and use. It's a nice little guide that they did, so I would consider that a must-have if you're going to do any breeding at all. I think with those and YouTube, check out my channel. I have a ton of Temtem videos. I've been really into this game, so I've been making a lot of videos for it. And this isn't like my channel is not a Temtem only channel. I make videos of what I'm currently into. That's just what I do, and I'm currently into Temtem. So, but check my channel. I have a lot of resources, and I think that's about it for resources for the game. Anything else, Google it. So speaking of my videos that I've done, I did a what I wish I would have known before I started playing video. Feel free to check that out, but I'm going to go over some of that because some of that is kind of beginner guide stuff, and I think it needs to be said in this video. So one of the things that I would suggest is when you start the game, pick your looks. Take some time. I mean, there's not a whole lot of customization right now, but pick your colors, pick how you want your guy or girl or non-gender to look, and spend some time on that because you can't change that easily in the game currently. It takes a lot of in-game money to change it. Dyes are hard to come by. So just spend some time, be satisfied with how your character looks before you start playing. Don't rush into it. When you start playing, you're going to come across your Temtem trainer professor. He's going to ask you to pick your first starting Temtem. I would recommend Hocus as my top pick. Reason for that being is there's only one other mental that I know about in the game, a mental type, and it is a rare. And I'd like to have both of them. They're both good. So I would pick Hocus. The Crystal Temtem is good. It's a great defender. It's a great starter pick, but you can get one of those, exact one of those, in the game later. So I would not pick that because it's currently available in the game. Hocus is not. The other one is Smazy, which is like a melee type. Smazy's good. You can't get Smazy in the game, so Smazy's would be my second choice because you can't get Hocus or Smazy currently in the game, but there are a lot of melee types for you to acquire. So you can actually, on the first starting island, you can grab a really good melee type and utilize that. And you can't really grab a mental, I think, until far into the second map. So, and that's a rare mental at that, so you're going to have to farm that rare mental. So my first pick would be Hocus. If you don't like Hocus, I would go with Smazy. If you don't like Smazy, I mean, you can buy all of them on Discord. There's people that breed their starters. They're a little bit higher value because they're rare, because the only way you can get a Smazy or a Hocus is by, if you didn't pick one, is by buying one, and there's a limited amount of them because you can only breed so much. So once you've bred out your Hocus, your starter, and sold it, that's it, you're done. You can't get another one until they release that content in the future. He will also give you a 2-eye. I would keep your 2-eye. It's a good party member when you first start out, but also because 2-eyes are rare, they're a 5% chance, and you can only acquire them after you finish the current game and do a quest line, and then you can get to the area where they are. So that will be the only 2-eye you see until you're done with the game. So I would definitely keep a hold of that as well, just kind of a FYI. Majority of the storyline is told via, I don't know, I'll call them forced battles. So you'll have NPCs just standing there in your pathway. and in order to get through them, you have to fight them. So they're forced battles, or like challenges that you have to overcome to get to the next area, You know, just like in Pokemon, the little grass areas or specific areas like in dungeons or underground, stuff like that, only those areas will spawn battles randomly as you walk on them. The rest of the areas you can walk freely unless there's some type of forced battle there. A lot of the forced battles are going to be like Timmy and his mom, and Timmy's going to be like, I heard you were a Temtem trainer, let's fight! You know, so it's not very engaging, and a lot of times you'll feel like, ugh, you're just trying to get to the next area. You're like, stop stopping me. But my advice is just take it easy, enjoy those battles. Once you clear those battles out, you never have to do them again. They're done. They do give good in-game money reward. By the time I was done the game, I didn't spend too much money on ingredients and potions and stuff. By the time I was done, I had like 30 or 40,000 Pansun, which that's enough to buy like, you know, maybe 3 or 4 perfect Temtem right now in the current market. So I mean, it's a lot of money that it gives you from doing all these. But the main progression and storyline comes from fighting like the Dojo Masters. So you gotta like go find the Dojo Masters and then fight them to open their dojo, and that kind of progresses the storyline to other maps. I think each map has, I think they all have 1 dojo. I think the second map might have 2 dojos, but like the first one is really easy, and then the second one's more like the dojo. So like after you fight each map, or after you explore each map, you fight the dojo leader. They are a little difficult. I didn't find too many of the battles difficult. To me, it was more about resource management, like all the normal battles throughout the game. You know, you do as many as you can, and then you have to go back to the station to heal up, and then you come back and do more battles. The dojo battles, you had to be pretty careful with your group combination. So I would suggest, my suggestion is go in blind, right? Go in the first time, you might fail, you might win it, and you'll feel awesome. But if you fail, look at what Temtems that Dojo Master threw at you, and then learn from that and build your team around that. And then the second or third time, you won't fail. Death in this game is not very punishing. You lose 250 Pansun, which is like, that's nothing. That's like the cost of a couple heals. So it's not very punishing. So don't worry about it too much. You know, it only takes you a little bit of time to run back once you've cleared your path there. It's easy to run through. It doesn't take very long to run around the entire map once you've cleared out all the force stops. And you might hear something about your ice skates if you're in Discord, or you might see videos talk about it. Basically, at some point in the storyline, without giving away too many spoilers, you lose all your stuff, like everything, your whole Temtem team. You don't have access to the bank. You can't. You only have, I think you only have the Temtem that were in your six Temtem party, and that's it. And you kind of got to make your way through, and you find most of your stuff on the ground afterwards, but you don't get your crystal ice skates back. So these are in the second map. You obtain through the storyline skates that give you the ability to go over the red crystal, which allows you access to areas you otherwise would not have access to. So there's nothing super important. There used to be an item that you couldn't get, the 4-leaf clover, without the skates, without doing an exploit, but they fixed that. You can now obtain them even before you get the skates. So really there's nothing detrimental that you're going to miss out on, but I would highly recommend that when you do get the skates in the game, and when you're at that point of the story, that you pause your progression for a minute and you backtrack and you explore the volcano, and then you go over to the first map, and there's a cave in the water that you can explore where the 4-leaf clover is. Just explore all the areas that were previously blocked that had crystals in them, because they do have boxes, like containers, and those containers have items. They might have like bomb heals or smoke bombs or Temcards, or they have all these little items. So just run around, explore, make sure you thoroughly explored everything and collected all the boxes before you progress. If you're not worried about it and you just want to progress, it's not a big deal. You can get everything except for items locked away in the boxes, which you will be able to get later in the game. When they release it, you'll be able to get the skates later. It's just where they cut the early access off this part of the storyline where you get the skates back is not in the game yet, so it's kind of like a little roadblock. I think the full game will have 6 maps, or 6, they call them Airborne Archipelagos, or I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, but they're basically 6 maps or 6 floating islands that make up the current world. Currently there's only 3, so half of the game is released. So you start off on Deniz, I believe it's pronounced, and then you go to Amnesia, and then you go to Takuma. So the 3 that aren't released look to be like Arbury, Sipanaku, Kisiwa. So those are the 3 maps that have not been released. By the way, this game, I have been working on pronunciation in this game like crazy, just trying to understand how to pronounce these Temtem's names sometimes. Oh my goodness. So yeah, it's okay if you don't pronounce it right. Nobody's gonna hold it against you. Everybody's like, what is that word? A lot of them are from other languages, and or combinations of different words to make up a new word. So it's funny. But yeah, so the world is made up of 6 maps. 3 is currently in the game. So as you travel around the world, you're going to unlock, not really unlock, but you're going to gain access to recharging stations, which will have usually like a Temtem bank and a vendor that will sell you, all your general items. When you use one of those recharge stations, that's where you will go to when you use a smoke bomb. Smoke bombs are items that you can find or you can buy from the vendor. I always have at least 1 smoke bomb on you, because there are spots in the game currently where your character can get stuck and you will be trapped. I don't know how they expect you to get out of there unless you call a GM. You'll literally be trapped. You'd have to probably beg a smoke bomb off somebody, like, hey, can somebody trade me a smoke bomb real quick? So always have at least 1 smoke bomb on you. I usually keep 10 or 20 on me. You don't use them that often, but what I use them for is to heal. So I'll go out and do my 4-stop battles. I'll go and do my encounters. And then when I'm low, instead of using bombs, which are pretty expensive, looking it up real quick, the smoke bombs cost 120. The basic bomb, the healing bomb, not bomb, but bomb, costs 80, which only does 25 hit points. And a revive costs 500. The recharging stations will heal all your Temtems to full, remove any status effects they may have, and revive all the dead ones. So basically, my playstyle was I go until my Temtem team is almost dead. I don't want to lose the 250 by having, I'm sorry, not dead. The Pokemon players attack me whenever I say dead. Knocked out. Nobody dies in this game. Everybody just gets knocked out. Knocked out and comfortably resting until a medic can heal them back to full health. Definitely no violence. It's funny how people get so upset about that, but it is what it is. Yeah, so they recharge all your knocked out Temtem. So they're very useful, and what I do is I go out and go almost to where I'm completely, all my Temtem are gone and I'm almost knocked out. And then I use a smoke bomb, boom, recharge, because it's pretty much cheaper. You're saying like to revive everybody and then heal everybody would be like a few thousand money, where this would be like 300 or 350 to use a smoke bomb, go back to the charging station, recharge, mess around with the vendor, buy in, refresh my stack of Temcards, by the way. So Temcards, when you first start out, you'll get 10 of them. Use them to capture unique Temtems, right? Starting out, you won't have a lot of money. So everything's going to be expensive to you. So just save them for when you bump across a Temtem that you currently do not have in your collection. Eventually, you will find yourself with a few hundred in-game money, a few hundred Panson, or maybe 1,000. When you start getting to that point, buy cards, right? You want Temcards, you want to capture Temtem, because by capturing them, you A, might get one with a good stat. B, when you release it, you will get the free Temtem money. Even if on the first island you don't have access to the free Temtem vendor on the second island, you're still getting credit for that release. You're still getting the money. You just can't collect it yet. Also, there is a weekly of usually having to release like 200 or 300 or 250 Temtem, and you get a really nice reward for doing that, and any release counts towards that. So once you're able, buy Temp cards, use your Temp cards. Always keep Temp cards on you. I mean, even at low levels, you can come across a Luma. What if you walk out there and there's a Luma there? You're going to have to throw a lot of cards at that thing. So once you can afford it, buy 99 of them. The max stack is 99. Always refill them, always replenish them, always have them on you. You don't want to run out of Temp cards. That's the worst. You do want to capture each unique type of Temtem. The reason for this, even if you're not going to use that Temtem in your party, you want to encounter and capture it at least once. Because once you do, it goes into your Tempedia, which is like your, Wikipedia of Temtem, Encyclopedia of Temtem. And once you have that entry in there, when you use an ability on a Temtem opponent, there will be a ring around it, and that ring will start to signify whether the ability you're using is effective or not effective or neutral towards it. So if it's not effective, it'll be red. If it's effective, it'll be green. If it's neutral and will just do normal damage, then it'll be white. So if it's effective and it's green, it's going to do 2 times the damage. If it's red and resistant to it, then it's going to do half the damage to it. So it's definitely a nice, easy little marker in there to kind of eventually you'll know what is weak against what. You'll get familiarized with it using the elemental charts and stuff like that. But it's a nice little way to know, does this ability have what effect on that? And you just want to have that information collected in your Tempedia. Now, as far as catching the Temtem, I'm still trying to figure that out. I do know that when you lower their HP, it makes them less resistant to the Temp cards. So green HP, meaning full HP Temtem, is going to resist your Temp card a lot. One with orange HP or medium damage, their HP bar kind of lowers as you do damage to them and changes color. So when it's orange, it'll kind of capture them a little better. When it's red, that's ideal to capture Temtem. Also, status effects seem to enhance the ability of your Temp card to capture them. If you look at my video history, I've been playing around with builds that utilize poison status effects, stacking 3 to 4 times on them. And that way you don't have to worry about their HP being extremely low, because what can happen is when you battle them down, A, it takes time to battle them down, and B, when you battle them down to very low health, it's very easy for you to accidentally kill them, or them to accidentally kill themselves, because they can kill themselves by overexerting using an ability that costs too much. So just to keep this simple, I'm going to say get their health down to red if possible. Get a status effect on them if possible, like a poison, a sleep, a hypnotize, or like a chill effect or a burn effect. Any kind of status effect on the Temtem you're trying to capture will have a beneficial reaction to capturing them with a Temp card. Now when you capture them, like I said, you can release them or keep them. If you don't have that or have it captured, the specific Temtem, I would keep at least one of them. You can get rid of them later, but as long as you keep them to get them in your Tempedia. You want to keep any with the SV, which is a starting value that has a 50. Keep any of them for sale or breeding later. If you come across a Luma, try not to poop yourself. Stay calm. What I would recommend is not even attacking it. If you have plenty of Temp cards, if you have 20, 30 plus Temp cards, I would just start throwing them let him attack you, keep yourself healed, and just start throwing cards at him. Even at full health, you have a chance of capturing him. So just go ahead and waste it. It's not a waste of money because they're so valuable if you do succeed in catching it that, you're not even worried about the few hundred money that you use to capture it. So just start throwing everything you got at it. If you have the better Temp card pluses, I would use them on a Luma. Just start throwing them at it, and hopefully you catch it. And then you'll be super excited and you can keep it or sell it or breed it and do whatever you want. But speaking of the 50 SVs, let me go into stats. I'm going to kind of go on the wiki and just because there's so much to stats to kind of go over. I'm just going to try to keep it general. I don't want this to become like a stat guide, I'll just give a basic breakdown of SVs and TVs and what different status effects have, and then I think maybe after that I'll get into elements. So let's go ahead and do that. Alrighty then. So HP is your hit points, obviously. This is when this reaches to 0, you get knocked out. Attack is your physical attack. So there's 2 types of attack. There's physical and special. So ATK is your attack. SPATK is your special attack. The higher that is, the more damage you'll get from that specific type of attack. Each attack has what type it is listed on it. DEF is your defense. That's your defense against physical attacks. So that's your defense against ATK. Your SPDEF, your special defense, is your defense against special attacks. So your SPATK. Your speed determines the priority of your move. So each move has a speed or a ranking system, and then this modifies that ranking system. So it is possible. So let's say you have a priority ability. I'm just picking this. I don't know if this is actually possible because it might be different with different priority systems and stages, but just for an example, let's say you have an ability with a priority of 2, and your opponent has an ability with a priority of 3. And then your Temtem each have a speed stat, and that speed stat adjusts the priority level as well. So I believe it is possible for you to have a priority 2, have a high speed stat on your Temtem, which will push that priority 2 up past his level of priority 3, and thus when you pick your ability and he picks his ability during a battle, you'll actually go first even though you're using a lower priority target. I think that's possible to do that, but what I do know speed is for is if you're both using a 3, like a priority 3, which is a fast attack, and you have a higher speed on your Temtem than he has a higher speed on his Temtem, that's gonna judge who goes first. So your priority 3 will hit him before his priority 3 will get launched and hit you. And this is very big when you're battling competitively, or even just in PvE when you're doing normal fighting. Speed determining who goes first matters, because that's the difference of getting a hypnotize off and then he loses his turn before he can even hit, or did he hit you, you took damage, and then you hypnotized him or something like that. So speed is important, but you have to be very careful because you might not be, if you bump your speed, if you have slow abilities, it might not matter because you're never going to out prioritize a fast fighter that you're going against. So you really, I'm pretty sure if you go into like the competitive channel on the Discord and talk about it, there's some advanced players in there that can help you understand like which moves can outspeed what moves depending on what the Temtem speed is, and they're in there breaking down all that kind of stuff to an expert level. So speed's important, but then again, it can be not important depending on what the move is and the Temtem is. STA is your stamina, so that's like your energy or your mana that your Temtem uses. They call it stamina in this game. It's your resource. Each ability has listed what it costs, and then you eat through your resources. Big, powerful, damaging abilities will use more stamina. Fast-hitting priorities usually cost more stamina than like something in between. Something with no holds versus something with 3 holds. And I'll get into holds later. So stamina is very important. You can rest and gain stamina back. You can overexert yourself. So let's say you have 20 stamina left and you want to use your 40 stamina ability. You're still allowed to do that, but what will happen is it'll take your hit points as well instead of the stamina. So it'll take 20 stamina and 20 hit points from you. So you'll do a little damage, and then you'll get an overexertion, which means you basically can't attack next turn. You're either forced to rest, or you can pull that Temtem out and put another Temtem in. All right, so they're your base stats, and I'll get into those in a little bit. I want to jump over into abilities real quick and tie that in. So when I say abilities, I'm actually using the wrong word. They're called techniques in this game. They're your fighting moves or your abilities or your spells, whatever you want to call them. Each of them have a elemental type, and I'll get into what the types are later. Each have a damage that they do. Each has a stamina cost that it costs, which is listed on there. Each will have a hold, and holds confused me at first. They're designated by like a little slash, so there's like a color indicating what type the ability or technique is. So for like melee, it's like an orange tan color. For mental, it's a purple color. So it'll have the color assigned to the type, or what I would say like elemental, that it is. And then every additional slash after that means one hold. And then what each hold means, so every slash means you have to wait that many turns before that becomes available again. So you have moves that have no holds, so it just has the single corner color next to the name. And then you have moves that might have like one hold, and it'll have like one slash bar. It means you gotta wait one turn before you can use that. Then you have like super ultra powerful moves that like, you know, that hypnotize the whole team. That might have 2 or 3 holds. So you gotta wait 2 or 3 rounds before you can put that move into effect. And then it also, the number on the technique or ability or spell or whatever you want to call it, that indicates the stamina that it's going to cost to use it. So just looking at a stat, you can see what its name is, what element or what type it is, how much it'll cost, and how many holds. And if the hold's grayed out, it's not ready yet. If the hold stripe bar is lit up, then you know it's ready. So that's kind of how to read the technique. And then if you dig into the details of the ability, spell, technique, you'll see that it tells you what type it is, what category it is. Is it physical? Is it special? Or is it status? So physical has like a little explosive with a black inside kind of little emblem that indicates that it uses your attack, and that is defended by the defense stat. The special looks more like a star, a little symbol almost. That shows that the attack is a special attack, and it is defended by the special defense. So physical attack, physical defense, special attack, special defense. It's that simple. There's nothing more to it than that. Status effect are usually non-damaging type of abilities, like sleep or things like that. There's also status effects like poison. Poison is a damaging ability. There's status effects like regen that heals. So there's different status effects that can do things. Not all of them are non-damaging. There are some that reduce types of damage. There's all kinds of stuff. But they're the 3 basic types of techniques: physical, special, status. And that's important because if you're choosing a Temtem to fight against another Temtem, well, that Temtem might be a special user. So you might want a Temtem that does, and it might have weak physical defense but high special defense. So like, let's say it's a special attacker and a special defender, but it has low physical defense. You might want to throw in one of your Temtems that you know has a high attack for physical and maybe also has a high special defense, and then you're going to go in and slaughter him because you're defending everything he's throwing at you, and you're doing extra damage because he's weak to your physical. So that kind of all plays out when you get more into the advanced stuff and more, I think, fighting other players. And then you have the priorities. So they're indicated by like a little dash, which means that's the absolute lowest, which I think is silly because it's like they use arrows. They should have just stuck with arrows, I think. Just use a line of arrows. But dash means the lowest. One single like greater than arrow symbol means it's low priority. 2 symbols mean it's normal. 3 means it's high, which means it's 1.5 times the speed of the other user of your, I guess, your speed stat. And then 4 with a little plus symbol means very high. And then ultra, which is like 3 with a plus symbol is very high. And then ultra is 3 little greater than symbols with a star, means it's very fast. So I don't know. I'm not too big on their little symbol. They probably should just use like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bars. Maybe it was too confusing for your eyes to sit there and read how many there were, but that's what that means. How fast you're going to use that ability over somebody else's ability. Then, of course, you got how many it can target. So is the ability a self-target ability? Is it a single target ability? Is it a team where you can hit both of the other Temtems? Or is it an all ability? Like they're ones that affect your team and their team. So that's the targeting. And that, I think, is just worded. There's no symbol for that. Some of the abilities will have a synergy listed, which means it does like an extra ability or maybe extra damage if you're utilizing another Temtem in your team of a certain type. Like maybe you have an earth type and a fire type, and you have an earth ability that synergizes with a fire type. So if you have one of those in your team, it'll do an extra condition. So that's what synergies are. And before we get back into the stats and the SVs and the TVs, I just wanted to go over the types of different abilities and different Temtems. So just real quick rundown, you got neutral, you got fire, nature, water, electric, mental, earth, wind, crystal, digital, melee, and toxic. And now a Temtem can be a pure type or it can be a dual type. So you'll see like a lot of fire, crystal, or like melee, earth type hybrids. So a Temtem can either be a pure or a hybrid type. And if it is a pure, different types are weak against other types. So for example, water type would be do twice the damage to a fire type. So fire's weak against water. Fire also does good damage to earth type. So earth is weak against water. Water strong against earth. Water is, let's see what they're weak against. Plant, it looks like. Plant can do 2 times damage to water. So water's weak against plant. Water is also weak against electricity and toxic. So if you look at this chart, you can kind of go from left to right. Will show you what your element or your type is strong against. And if you go from top to bottom on the defense column, it'll show you what it is weak against. It's a good, when you start off, you'll be utilizing this chart like crazy, because trying to memorize all this stuff, I've been playing for many hours now, and I still don't have this thing memorized. I have a good idea of the basics, but sometimes I have to look. Like I forget digital and melee a lot of times, and toxic, so I have to look at some of the less commonly used types and see what it is weak or strong against. Now, when you have a combined type, meaning when you have like a hybrid, so let's say I had a plant and water seems to be a common type. So you inherit their weaknesses and you also inherit their strengths. So if you have a type that is both weak against something, so let me see, is plant and water both? Oh, here we go. So plant and water is both weak against toxic. So plant, your toxic is going to do 2 times damage to plant. Toxic is going to do 2 times damage to water. So if you have a water plant hybrid Temtem and somebody hits you with a toxic ability, you're getting hit for 4 times damage. Your weaknesses and strengths add on to each other. Vice versa, if you have a type that is weak against another type but strong against another, the other type is strong against that same type, the weakness will cancel itself out and you'll just get hit for normal damage. I hope that kind of made sense. So like if you have a hybrid Temtem with 2 conflicting types of elements or that it has in it, and then that element hits you, you're strong against it, but you're also weak against it, and then when it hits you, it's just doing normal damage. Also, if you're very defensive against the type because you're a hybrid, so for example, water and plant in that example is highly defensive against water, so it takes half damage for water and half damage for plant, then you're going to take 1/4 damage, which is really nice. So you got to kind of weigh this out. I think this is the most important. This is level 1, right? Forget about all your techniques and priorities and your attack and your special defense, and they're secondary and lower. The type is the most important. You want to match your Temtem up to what it's strong against, and you want to have your attacking Temtem attack things that have weak defense against that attack type. So now remember, your type of Temtem is more about your defense. Your type of ability is more about the attack. So just because your Temtem is plant doesn't mean all your attacking abilities hit for plant. It's what the ability type is listed as. So the type, I guess the easy way to put it is your Temtem's type is your defense. Your abilities type is your attack, what you're attacking with. So make sure you check what abilities you're using, because most Temtems get neutral. They usually all get some type of basic neutral attack. And then if they're not a hybrid, they're purist, they'll mostly have the type of attack, like let's say they're fire. They're going to have mostly fire attacks, some neutral, but they may still have one or two other types. They don't have to be a hybrid just to have some other types. And then hybrids will usually have neutral plus both types of their whatever they're hybrid with. If you have nature toxic or nature water, they're going to have both those types. And then they also have egg moves. So when you breed, you have to breed within its types. So you can breed nature with nature. You can breed a nature with a Temtem that's nature and water. It just has to have at least one type in common to be able to breed. It doesn't have to be the same Temtem. So they have a thing called egg moves, where let's say the water type has a move that is listed as an egg move that can be transferred. And you have to check. Not all egg moves are transferable. You have to look at the Temtem you're building, see what egg moves are transferable to it, and then see what Temtems have that egg move that can be bred over to it. But then you can breed in different egg moves, and then you can have different types, and it gets pretty complicated, but it's pretty cool that it goes in depth. There's a lot to learn about it, but that's basically your type breakdown. Utilize the chart. You're not going to memorize the chart right away. You're probably going to want it up. If you don't have an extra monitor, you're playing with one monitor, print this thing out. Get a nice big old printout. You're going to be referencing it all the time. Alright, and last but not least, let's talk about base stats, SVs, and TVs. Now, this whole video I've been saying starting values. They're actually called single values, and TVs are training values. I don't know why they call them single values. I call them starting values because they're what you get when you either first breed a Temtem, or when you capture a Temtem, it has that starting value, but they call them single values. I'll just start calling them SVs so I don't mess it up anymore. SVs are what your Temtem have as its stats when you either capture it or breed it. And there is a way to breed perfect SVs, so you can have all 7 of your stats perfect 50s. So it can be in between 1 and 50. Now it's like a roll of the dice when you capture a Temtem. Each stat is rolling a 50-sided dice, basically. So you got 7 dice, 1 to 50, you roll them, that's what your stats are. So you potentially could have a Temtem captured to have all 1s. You potentially could have a Temtem to have all 50s. Usually what you'll find is, a range of numbers, and if you get lucky, you'll get one stat that has a 50. Maybe if you get really lucky, you'll have a Temtem that rolled a stat with 2 of them 50. Keep them for selling or breeding later. So that's what single values are. That's why breeding perfect Temtems, what perfect means is all 7 stats or 50s are a big thing, because you're not going to find a all 50 single value Temtem or all 50 SV Temtem out in the wild. It's just not going to happen. I think that the chances of that are probably less than a Luma. The training values. So the training values are a little weird. So training values, when you get a freshly hatched egg from breeding, or when you capture them, freshly hatched eggs will have no TVs whatsoever. They'll all be 0. So you want to take care of how you utilize your TVs. When you capture a Temtem, it's going to have some random stats in there, but they won't be maxed out or anything. Now, how you train training values or TVs is you fight other Temtem. Other Temtem in the wild, when you either capture them or knock them out, in my case, kill them, when you kill the Temtem or capture them, you get experience, and then you also get training values to any Temtem who is in your party or who has on the Coward's Cloak and is sharing the experience. You'll get whatever training values is assigned. There's also a piece of equipment called Protein, which doubles the amount of training values. So that's basically, you get a fresh hatched egg, you want to throw Protein on him, go to a spot with Temtem that give you the training values you want, and just sit there and capture or knock them out. In my case, kill them mercilessly. To train your TVs up, you have a maximum of 1,000 points to spend total out of all 7. Each stat can only have a max of 500. For each individual of the 7 stats, your HP, your stamina, your attack, etc., etc., you can only take it up to 500. So maximum, you can have 2 stats at 500 and the rest at 0. And that's usually what a lot of people do. They'll take the 2 stats that they want. If they have an attacker, they're going to put probably, 500 in an attack and maybe 500 in hit points, or maybe if they need it in defense. Depending on, there is no best stat. So that's why a lot of people will huff and fuff when people go, what's the best stat for, Platox or whatever, or what's the best TVs for Hoochik? Well, it really depends on what you want to do with him. That's why a lot of people have a hard time answering. There is no best stat. It really depends how you're going to play him, what your objective is, to give you the best stat. And really, if you just think about it, you can probably answer the question yourself. But if not, go into like competitive in Discord and ask those guys in there what they would recommend. If I want to do this, make sure you mention if it's PvE or, competitive PvP or PvE for grinding. I want to do this. I'm thinking this might be good. What do you guys think? Would probably be a better way to phrase it than just go, what's the best? Well, it depends on what you want that for. I think last but not least are traits. So each Temtem can have one of 2 traits. Traits are born into the Temtem or captured. There's nothing you can do to control it. It'll be one or the other. Traits do evolve, so they will change. But a trait will, when, let's say you start with, I don't know, I'm just going to pick a trait. Benefactor is a good trait. Kinu has it. When an ally is damaged, restore 10% of its max hit points. So every time somebody hits your ally, it's going to heal them for 10% hit points. That's a very good trait. Kinu is the guy who has that, and you'll see a lot of people utilize Kinu for grinding in Endgame for that reason. But I don't think that's the case with Benefactor, but let's just use that as a hypothetical example. Let's say Benefactor was called, Healing Aura at level, at the first stage of Kinu. And then when he evolves, it's going to turn into something else, let's say Benefactor. So it can and will change, but it won't change randomly. There's 2, think of it as 2 individual lines. You either have one lineage or line trait, or you have another lineage or line trait. And as you evolve, it's going to go directly up that path accordingly. It's not going to change. You're not going to change from one line of traits to the other. So sometimes you don't want your guy to evolve because you really like the trait that he has, and when he evolves, it's going to change into something you really might not want. Traits are very important. They usually have a huge benefit and impact on the battle, depending on the Temtem and the trait. You'll see the value increase and decrease. So like one Temtem with an unwanted trait might go for 15 or 20k, perfect stats, but with all the egg moves and all the hassle done. But when he hatched, he had this undesired trait, so I'm just selling him for 15 or 20k. Versus that same Temtem, all stats, all egg moves bred into him, all the work done, got the good trait. I'm selling him for 70k because this is the one everybody wants. So traits really matter. They affect the battle in big ways. And they are heavily desired, and they are uncontrollable. So when you're breeding, there is no item that will force a specific trait. And I think that's good because that does fluctuate. If you could control the traits, then everybody would just go with whatever the meta is. You wouldn't have low-priced Temtems, high-priced Temtems. So I like that you can't control that as much. And then I think I'm wrapping about everything up. I think I touched on all the topics. I think there's a few that I missed, like stat modifiers. Basically, like if you throw like Nimble on somebody, it makes them, I think, faster. How many stacks of that you put on them? Like let's say you have a stack that increases your attack. When you throw one on there, it's going to increase your attack by 150%. And if you throw another modifier on them that has 2 stacks, that's going to increase it by 200. And I think you can go up to 5 stats, which increases 350%. So, you know, that's crazy. If you have attack modifier that increases your attack by 350% or your defense, you're going to be very doing a lot of damage or taking very little damage. So that's very important to understand, that those stat modifiers make a huge difference. So buffing and debuffing is going to be a big part, I think, of PvP and battles and such. And then there's gear. How could I forget gear? I would have kicked myself in the butt if I would have forgot to put gear in this video. So gear can be consumable or non-consumable. Most of it is non-consumable. It changes how your Temtem acts. So each Temtem can equip 1 piece of gear. Usually only get 1 type of gear. I don't know if you can have multiple copies. Currently you can't. Some notable gear is like the 4-leaf Clover, which when put on a Temtem increases the catch rate. So when you throw your Temcard and it captures, it helps you increase that catch rate. There's the Coward's Cloak, which when you put it on a Temtem, they'll get experience and they'll get TVs even if they're not in the battle. So experience only gets divvied up between anybody in the battle, you know, if you switch Temtems in and out. But if you have you have your number 6 Temtem just sitting there, he won't get any of that experience. He won't get any of the TVs. But if he has the Coward's Cloak on, he will. Great way to power level new Temtem that just got hatched and such. What else is a good one? Let me see here. Proteins doubles the amount of TVs you get. That's very good. One to have. Sweatbands, one that comes towards the end of the game. Each turn, you restore 15% of your stamina. So if you have a Temtem that has maneuvers that use a lot of stamina, or, you know, is your primary hitter, Sweatband is good for him. There's ones that reduce certain types. There's one I'm forgetting that's really good. Coward's Cloak, 4-leaf Clover. Oh, Lure. Lure is a very good one. It forces Temtems to attack whoever's wearing it. And this is good. It doesn't work in PvP. It doesn't work on tamers, but it works for wild Temtem. It forces them to attack one specific Temtem, and you'll see this in my other videos where I utilize Lure a lot to put it on my beefy one that's going to take all the damage, and then I have my weaker Temtem that's like maybe a healer or a debuffer or something that will take no damage. And it helps you kind of manage how your damage is taken and manage how you can stay out in the field a little longer. So yeah, I think Lure, Proteins, Coward's Cloak, 4-leaf Clover, they're the big ones. There's a whole bunch of different pieces of equipment out there that you'll gather up, and they all have their uses. But gear is a big deal. And just like gear that is found in chests and rewarded for quests, there are also courses. It's similar to gear. It's non-consumable, and it teaches your Temtem techniques or skills, abilities, whatever you want to call them. So you don't have to equip courses to the Temtem. You just kind of like use it as like just a learning. So when you get a new Temtem, you pick the course. It tells you what Temtem can learn that specific move, and then you just assign it to that Temtem, and the Temtem will learn it and have it from then on. And it does not consume the course. So the courses are kind of important to find and have, so that your Temtem can have all the moves that it possibly can have. Like basically a perfect Temtem is going to have all the egg moves, it's going to have all the courses, all the moves they can get by leveling up, and it's going to have the perfect trait that you want, and you're going to have it bred to be all 50s, and the super ultra perfect would be all that plus a Luma. That thing would be worth $1 million, $2 million pants on. And I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this beginner's guide. It's very long. There was a lot to cover, but I've been wanting to do this for a very long time. And I've been waiting until I, had a little more experience with the game, fully completed it, did some grinding, did some breeding, did some trading, kind of understood it more fully before I put this out so I could give a very broad overall perspective on all the different aspects. I expected this video to be super long. I apologize if there's any misinformation. I tried to be as accurate as I possibly could with the knowledge that I've acquired over the last couple weeks playing this game, but by no means am I an expert. I'm only sharing what information I have with you. To those of you crazy enough to sit through this whole thing, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm going to put links in the description so people can just kind of pop through the different parts. Maybe you want to come back and watch the video again. And, just what was that thing that he said that one time? And you'll be able to get to it and find it a little quicker. I'll try to do my best to be as descriptive as I can there. And I hope you've enjoyed it. This was a long time in the making. And I put a lot of effort. Actually, it may not seem like it because I'm just kind of casually talking about the topics, but I put a lot of thought into this. I mean, just recording this and editing the voice was probably 3 hours worth of work. And then I gotta go pull all the images, video footage from the past. So this is definitely a pretty big video job for me. Hey, it's future me interrupting here. This has actually been a 15-hour long project. I've been working on it all day today. It's about 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm just finishing up the video clips and the audio. I still got to add the music track. Oh my god. I doubt I'll be doing one like this again. That was a whole lot of work. But it's fun. I enjoyed doing it. And like I said, I've been wanting to do this for a long time. But wow, I was not expecting this. But I'm getting it done. And I hope you enjoy it. If you did, please, I would highly appreciate a thumbs up. If you would like to subscribe to my channel, I would be honored. I'm getting a lot of subscribers popping up, and I really appreciate that. It's great. I'm getting a lot of comments and feedback, intelligent comments, very positive feedback in the comment system. So I'm very happy about that. This has been a very fun experience making these videos for me. So I thank you very much. Please check out my other videos. Go to my channel, look through all of them. I put so many out. Just take a look, see if there's anything in there that interests you. And I'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much.